Picture this. It's 19th century America. Gold glimmers in California streams, railroad tracks snake across the wilderness, and cowboys strut around with hats so wide you'd think they were trying to block the sun for everyone. Amidst this Wild West chaos, a strange whisper runs through the streets. Beware the Chinese. They're coming for our jobs, our gold, and possibly our chickens. The Chinese immigrants, armed with their strange hats, delicious dumplings, and unrelenting work ethic, are about to face one of history's most spectacularly misguided panics. And no, it wasn't about kung pao, chicken recipes being stolen. This was America's first grand drama of xenophobia, complete with melodrama, hypocrisy, and a touch of ridiculousness. So grab your spittoons and settle in for the tale of how one nation managed to fear people so much smaller in numbers that they could have just played hide-and-seek and won. The 1800s were a whirlwind of opportunity in America, where the land of dreams lured waves of immigrants. Among them were the Chinese, many of whom sought fortunes during the California gold rush. By the 1860s, Chinese workers also became essential in building the Transcontinental Railroad, laying tracks through harsh terrain and explosive mountains, while being paid a fraction of what white workers earned. Think of it as America's 19th century version of do more with less or else. While the Chinese worked tirelessly, rarely causing trouble beyond introducing the magic of stir-fry many, white Americans began losing their cool. "They're taking our jobs" became the rallying cry, though no one seemed to question why these immigrants, who didn't even speak the language, were somehow outworking them. Apparently, being industrious was a crime. It didn't help that the Chinese lived differently. They wore queues, long braids, ate food most Americans found mysterious, until the first bite of fried rice changed the game, and stayed close-knit in Chinatowns. Naturally, to the suspicious and the bored, this made them and other perfect scapegoats for economic downturns and wild conspiracy theories. Political cartoons of the era took things to comical levels, depicting Chinese immigrants as sinister invaders, plotting to overrun the country with opium dens and laundry businesses. Yes, the horror of cleaner clothes and better-smelling towns was apparently a real concern. But it wasn't all just snide drawings. America took it further by making it legal to hate the Chinese. In 1882, Congress passed the Chinese Exclusion Act, the first major federal law to restrict immigration based solely on nationality. This law banned Chinese laborers from entering the U.S., with the logic being, we like your hard work, but not your presence. For Chinese already in America, it was a nightmare. They couldn't become citizens, bring over their families, or even feel safe in their communities. But, oh, the irony. The same people who claimed the Chinese were stealing jobs had, just a decade earlier, been singing their praises as the backbone of the railroad industry. And as it turns out, while they were kicking Chinese laborers out, white workers weren't exactly lining up to take on those backbreaking tasks. Go figure. The Exclusion Act also led to a comedy of legal absurdities. Chinese immigrants had to carry identification papers everywhere, and if they lost them, well, tough lucky, you might just get deported. It was like the DMV meets a Wild West showdown. As the decades rolled on, the Chinese Exclusion Act set a nasty precedent. Why stop at hating one group when you can be an equal opportunity hater? By the early 20th century, America expanded its anti-immigrant policies to other groups. The Immigration Act of 1924 targeted Japanese immigrants and severely limited immigration from Southern and Eastern Europe. Italians, Jews, and Eastern Europeans were branded as unfit for American society because apparently spaghetti and bagels were just too threatening. Even literacy tests were introduced for incoming immigrants because nothing says freedom like gatekeeping knowledge. The Immigration Act of 1924 targeted Japanese immigrants and severely limited immigration from Southern and Eastern Europe. Italians, Jews, and Eastern Europeans were branded as unfit for American society because apparently spaghetti and bagels were just too threatening. Even literacy tests were introduced for incoming immigrants because nothing says freedom like gatekeeping knowledge. Meanwhile, the Chinese immigrants who did manage to stay in America faced decades of systemic racism, including being segregated into specific neighborhoods and denied opportunities. Chinatowns became vibrant hubs of culture and resilience, but they were also born out of necessity because most white Americans refused to live near them. Fast forward to the mid-20th century, and the US finally started to realize it had been, well, a little ridiculous. During World War II, the Chinese became allies against Japan, and suddenly America thought maybe we shouldn't treat our friends like villains. In 1943, the Chinese Exclusion Act was repealed, but only after 61 years of discrimination that couldn't just be erased with a handshake and a fortune cookie. And here's the kicker. The repeal allowed only a measly 105 Chinese immigrants to enter the US per year. Yes, 105. That's barely enough people to fill a dim sum restaurant on a Saturday. Progress, but make it slow and awkward. By 1965, the Immigration and Nationality Act finally abolished racial quotas, opening the door for immigrants from all over the world. And guess what? America didn't crumble into chaos. In fact, it thrived, proving that maybe just maybe diversity isn't a bad thing. Today, the ghosts of the Chinese Exclusion Act linger. Xenophobia may have swapped its targets over the years, but the same fears and myths continue to resurface. So let's learn from history, laugh at its absurdities, and most importantly, do better. Next time someone says they're taking our jobs, maybe remind them that the real competition is probably a robot, not your immigrant neighbor. And when they complain about strange food, just smile and take them out. For dim sum, they'll be converts by the third dumpling. The tale of 19th century anti-immigrant sentiments is as much about fear as it is about resilience. It's a reminder that prejudice often stems from ignorance and insecurity, and that humor, hard work, and a good plate of fried rice can overcome even the most stubborn of biases. So here's to the Chinese immigrants who faced unimaginable odds and still managed to shape America's story one railroad spike, one stir-fry, and one indomitable spirit at a time. And here's to us learning to laugh at the past while building a better future. After all, if America can survive cowboy hats that big, it can survive anything.